Speaker of the day, Samir Kapadia. Vice President, Manish Sampath. Treasurer, Suhas Paranspe. Seniors and friends. A very warm good evening to all of you. Good evening. It's my pleasure to have welcome all of you to this session on GST proposed return formats. GST, of course, we have been talking about it as one of the most important landmark reforms of the century. While the law tried to simplify too many things, at the same time, when it came to the transactional level uploads, we started facing difficulties in the return flow process of GSTR 1, 2, 3, and all those things. And that's all history. We are all borne the brunt of that process. And that's where the government actually had to do a interim course correction by way of substituting GSTR 3B for GSTR 2 and 3. The GSTR 1 continues. That interim process has its own sets of issues which need to be separately resolved. But in the meantime, based on various trade representations and feedback, the government thought it fit that we should have a simplified single return rather than a three-stage filing process. And that's where the GST Council adopted this concept of a single return filing for all the SSs. Of course, in certain cases quarterly periodicity, and in some cases a monthly periodicity. The draft returns are there in the public domain, and when we really look at those draft returns, the question which emerges is, are these proposed GST return formats really simple enough? Because the whole objective was to really make it simple. We might coin words like Sahaj, Sugam, but are they really the English versions of those words of Sahaj and Sugam? There are many questions which are there. We did have a very interactive meeting with the GSTN CEO wherein he talked about the existing portal related issues just last fortnight. And is that and the new return formats, we felt it appropriate that before really the formats get finalized and the systems developments happen and then we start facing the brunt once again, perhaps it's time to really start a bit early and understand what exactly is there in the new return formats. Maybe it's not implemented immediately, but it's important to understand because it's a long-term process which we are looking at. And if we find that there are some gaps or some course corrections required in these proposals, the GSTN CEO was also very candid in inviting representations. And as BCAS, we would be keen to send some representation. So basis today's discussions, if we really find some points to represent, we can definitely take them up at an appropriate time to the respective forum. But coming back to these proposed formats, essentially, if you look at it, you'll find that to a large extent, it's the old content which is really coming back in a particular way. So when you look at the new format, is it really an old wine in a new bottle? Is it just a change of the names of GSTR 1, 2, 3 into annexures to the single return which we are talking about? Or is it really a game changer in terms of simplicity? That's a major question which comes before all of us. An ancillary question which comes is how are we going to handle the transition? Because in the new process, what we are going to highlight is to say that you will not be able to add additional invoices by the process. So when you're moving from one old GSTR 1, 2, 3 regime to the new regime, how is that transition going to be carried out? To discuss all of this, we thought we'll have a lecture meeting where we can understand all these aspects. And when we thought about a name for this lecture meeting, the one name which immediately came to our mind was someone from amongst us itself, Samir Kapadia, who has been on the managing committee of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society since a fairly long time. I think he is one of the senior most in terms of the number of years on the managing committee. He has been a convener of the indirect tax committee and he's very active on various activities on indirect taxes. He's a certified NAKIN GST trainer and has contributed at various lectures and seminars and other areas. In the past, he has been a convener of the committee of the Chamber of Tax Consultants as well. And it's my pleasure to welcome you, Samir, today for this session and looking forward to a very interesting session from you. Before I request you to speak, may I request Manish to present a small memento as a mark of our love and affection. Over to you, Samir.
A very good evening to all of you. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to BCS for giving me this opportunity. Uh, what I intend to do today is share a few thoughts that I have got as far as this new return formats are concerned. To begin with, the process, the steps that I intend to take, and the manner in which I intend to go ahead with this presentation is that first I will talk about what the current return filing process is. Briefly talk about some of the challenges that we have faced in the current process. Uh, some of the recommendations that BCS had made to GSTN when it came to the current format, as well as what was being proposed in terms of changes when Model A and Model B was proposed by Mr. Nilikani. Thereafter, get straight to the new process. In the new process, I will briefly talk about some of the terms which have been given in the notes along with the return, and at the same time keep the returns also on so that we can actually see where those items are going to be tabulated in the returns. And then just do a comparative between what the expectations were and whether these have been met. If they have not been met, whether we are better off or worse off. When GST was being ushered in, one of the key things that everybody was talking about is the compliance process. And all the while we were told that it would be very, very simple. You would upload your data in three parts. The first part being your outward supply, which would happen by the 10th. Thereafter, between 11th and 15th, you would have to reconcile whatever are your inward supplies. Basically, they said that you will get all the data on an auto-populated basis. You look at the data and either accept, either reject, add, modify, or keep pending. Depending on what you upload by the 15th, a summary return would be prepared with your liability by the 20th, and you discharge your liability by the 20th. Now, very clearly you can see the picture on the right. That was what was originally promised to us, to say that this is going to be a very, very smooth process. There is going to be very little effort that you will have to do. Maximum effort will go in preparing and uploading the data of outward supply. Everything else is going to be automated. There will be no hiccups at all. But when the actual filing process began, as people who are neck deep in the compliance process, who have to deal with it every day in and out, you would realize that actually the step one was filing GSTR1. Thereafter, whatever you filled became part of GSTR2A of your customer, which he was expected to accept, reject, add, modify, which would again come back to you in your GSTR1A, after which you would be able to tabulate your GSTR3 and thereafter upload it. Now, from the first month itself, GSTR1 did not take off. They managed to stabilize it by somewhere mid-September, and thereafter there was an attempt made even for GSTR2, but they realized that the system was just not able to cope with it. Now, there were various reasons for that, and they had to come up with GSTR3B. Now, the moment you try and look at the process, the picture on the left tells you what is the kind of difficulty that everybody had to face. I mean, when you are tabulating data, something as simple as outward supply data, you had to break it up into several tables. First, you had to say whether it was a B2B or B2C supply. If it were a B2C supply, you would again have to break it whether it is a local or interstate. If it were interstate, you would have to break it up to say, is it below a particular amount or is it above a particular amount? You would have to report it in a separate table. In B2B, you would have to say whether this is a normal supply or is it a SEZ supply. In SEZ, again, you would have to go down to say, is it with payment, without payment. Exports was a different thing. Advances was a different table. Debit note, credit notes were a different table. Now, if you look at your normal sale or purchase register, everybody who was into compliance with VAT, or for that matter service tax, was used to a sales register and a purchase register. And all one had to do was to upload summary data. Nobody was required, or rather most people did not have to compile it in so many different formats, and give each and every item in detail. You had to give probably 1 or 2 lines worth of data and fill up the return. The difficulty started when you had to give so much amount of information. Every time, each and every field in the return was being validated and errors were being thrown up. So during one of the discussions that we had with Mr. Prakash Kumar, he said that people keep on asking that why does it take so much time to upload the return, and why don't we get an acknowledgement immediately? The fact of the matter, he said, is that when you upload the return, we actually validate each and every field that you're uploading. We check it simultaneously against whatever are the other databases that we have to compare it to. For instance, whether the GSTN is valid or not, whether the GSTN is a normal GSTN or is it an SEZ GSTN, whether the place of supply is proper, whether the calculation is proper, so on and so forth. He said we perform so many checks before we actually validate the return and tell you that yes, this is proper. One of the biggest things and the most difficult thing that they are doing is they are actually checking whether each and every invoice that you have raised is a unique invoice or not. Has it been raised earlier or not? Now, that is not so simple when you consider a database which has millions and millions of records. To check it and come back in 20 minutes is not a small task. It's not an easy task. So to that extent, I would say that they were doing a great job. But the fact of the matter is that what do the taxpayers do? I mean, they are left hanging high and dry. They wait to know whether or not the return has been uploaded, and they wait endlessly. Part of the reasons when they prepared the mandate to give to GSTN, they said, okay, there will be so many people who will be filing. But they did not anticipate the rush of the small taxpayers also. Now, most of these taxpayers, and as is the habit with everybody, only now things are changing. Everybody goes to the GSTN portal for uploading only on the last date. This month, I'm sure a lot of people would have tried to take advantage of the holidays in between and try to upload their data, and they would have seen that despite having paid and despite having uploaded the data, it was not getting reflected immediately on the portal. In fact, the last 2 days, I believe, were quite nerve-wracking, and people have been waiting and waiting and waiting. So both the pictures that you see on the screen are the simple chaos that everybody has to face every month. Most of the time you see that we are serving already 150,000 people. Please wait. Now, this is not the message that most of the taxpayers expected, because when GSTN was being ushered in, at that time, most of the ministers, most of the people who are responsible, they said that you don't have to worry. Volume is not an issue. This is capable of doing X number of transactions simultaneously. But as you can see, that never happened. What was the outcome? Every month, people are waiting for an extension. I'm sure you would have seen hundreds and hundreds of messages yesterday and today. Is there an extension today? Everybody is forwarding. Yes, there is an extension. So what you get out of the entire process is only a tariq pe tariq. One extension after another extension. So recently there was an interaction that we were having in the office, and the question that was asked is that what happened to GSTR 2 and what happened to GSTR 3? So somewhere, we were trying to cull out that particular notification which said that the date will be decided and notified sometime in future. So one of the notifications that I put up, the one in the middle, actually has that text. Okay, it will be notified to you in future. And that future, I don't know whether it is close or it's never going to come. So what were the challenges that most of us faced? Very, very briefly. To put it, rather than blaming somebody, pointing fingers, one thing that we need to understand that the GSTN has always been in a state of flux. Forever, whenever you look at them, they say that, we are making this change, we are making that change, we are trying to resolve this process, we are trying to resolve that process. Every time you raise a ticket, they come back to you and say that we have resolved this issue, but you don't know what they have resolved and where they have resolved. Some of the interactions that we have had with the ASPs and some GSPs, we have been told that at times they are so afraid of making any change or doing something is because they are worried that if we change one thing, they will create a problem somewhere else. So now, considering that this is such a huge system, considering that there is such a complex amount of calculation and so many validations that are there in place, something or the other is bound to get missed out. I mean, no matter what checklist you might have, with everything that you follow as a process, you need time, you need patience, and you need diligence. From what we understand, that there were so many change requests from the government itself. It's like at one point of time they would have been told that please do this, and just as they are ready to launch, the government would have said no, no, scrap this, please go back to the old one. The classic example being that the government said that please give one-time access and one-time option where people can say whether you want to file it on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis. And as the interface was created, so many people made mistakes and they wanted to revert back to the one that they were already following. So, for instance, somebody wanted to go to a quarterly period and by default did not click it, went on to monthly, and he could not go back to quarterly at all, and vice versa. The worst thing was that they said that when we had to actually tabulate and see whether or not you are compliant or not, it was a bit of a nightmare for them also. So I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just saying that there were circumstances due to which the GSTN has never really stabilized. Apart from that, given the volume of data that they are supposed to handle and which they are required to handle on a month-to-month basis, there have been constant instances where there has been outages in the system. Either the systems are not talking or the data is not getting captured. In fact, from what I understand, there are situations that somebody has uploaded the data and at a later date found out that the return filing status is saying not filed, or the figures that are there appearing on the database are completely different. Now, some of them have actually dragged the GST into the court also to say that how can you do that? You're not supposed to alter what data I have uploaded. In their defense, they have said that if you have uploaded something, don't worry, it is there somewhere in the system. That signed document is always there. It is just a matter of finding it. Whether they will find it or not, we'll have to see in future. I'm not saying that it is an impossible thing, but it is a humongous task because it's like finding a needle in the haystack. It's not so simple. I mean, you might have heard all those stories where you say that, if you wanted to find a needle in the haystack, why didn't you take a magnet and go and find it? You might have those stories, but it's not as simple as that. Apart from that, when you look at it for the taxpayers and for the consultants, one of the problems has been that there are multiple levels and multiple types of compliances, and the compliance process itself is so lengthy. In order to reach to your result, you have to first take out the raw data, thereafter massage the data, thereafter validate the data. After validating, upload it in the template. If there is something wrong, some wrong character has come in, the data goes for a complete toss. After uploading, you find that the data is not correct. In fact, we had one situation where we were uploading returns of a service provider, and that service provider had provided services to ISD recipients. About 2 months back, the experience was so nerve-wracking. Every time they would try to upload and submit the data, they would be hit by error message saying there are a couple of invoices which you need to accept or reject and resolve the error. And they did that process over and over again, over and over again. The return went late by a couple of days. After maybe 7 or 8 days, when they finally thought that they have finished everything, they submitted the return. They were about to sign it with the DSC, and again they got another error. So this was something again which the GSTN did not anticipate. They were candid enough to say that this was completely out of the blue. They are saying that they're going to be resolving this particular issue also. But the fact of the matter is, just imagine, the experience that I talked to you about was GSTR 6. If GSTR 2 was actually in play, think of what would happen to your return. You would never be able to get out of it. Every time you tried to upload your GSTR 3, you would get some or the other error which would say that you need to resolve it. So what picture we have seen was just a small trailer of what could have been had the GSTR 2 and 3 been real. Apart from that, there have been several instances where there is lack of clarity. There is no stability, or there is no one thought on what the position will be. Your situation, if you see prior to the proposed amendments, how you will treat high C sales, whether or not you can utilize your CGST credit, SGST credit in any order that you choose. I'm talking about these two specific instances because in both these cases there is a proposed amendment wherein the government has now taken a position that you can proceed in a particular manner. There are several such open issues which they have not yet addressed. But the fact of the matter is that everybody expected that you should have had that clarity at least on day one. If not on day one, you should have had it somewhere in between. And had you told the taxpayers what to do, then you would not be facing this situation. Now, 1 year down the line, if you change the position and tell me that you need to pay interest and penalty on this, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's a very, very difficult and very hard burden that you put on me. Apart from that, I'm sure most of you by now would have received some or the other letter. I'm saying letter, I'm not saying notices, because in most cases you have received a letter, you have received an intimation. Some cases you have received an notice. They are issuing notices mechanically to say there is a mismatch between your GSTR 3B versus GSTR 1. There is a mismatch between GSTR 3 and 2A. You claim more credit. Now, when they give it to you or when they send you that notice, they send it to you as one single line item to say that between this period to this period, this is what you have shown, this is what we are seeing, and the figure is mismatching. The law as a process requires them to actually give you invoice-wise details, but they give you a summarized detail. Now, how will you find out what is the difference? GSTR 3B and 1, you can say it is still in your control. But if you look at GSTR 2A, that's a moving target. Every day somebody might be uploading some data. If you saw some data yesterday and you see some data today, you'll see that there is a difference. How do you reconcile that? How do you know which figure he saw on what day versus what figure you're seeing today? How did he come to that figure? There is no way to find out. There is no visibility. If you look at your own selves in your office, there is a severe crunch when it comes to resources. I mean, anybody and everybody who's been in the process of compliance, I don't know, I would ask you, how many breaks have you taken? Have you taken a vacation more than 3 days? Anybody? So I remember telling one of my clients actually that when GSTR 2 was going to be initiated, I said that considering the number of transactions, and so we are talking about 4 lakh transactions, which he had to reconcile in a period of 5 days, and he had a team of about 20 people. I said, if you break it up, you will need to clear as many as 2 or 3 invoices per minute in a 10-hour working day without a break and no absenteeism. We had one customer who actually, one client who told us that, now that everything is going to be centralized, probably I don't need so many people. I need to reduce my team. When we gave him the statistics, he said, I never thought of all this. Maybe I'll have to hire 2 or 3 people more just as backup. Because you never know, there might be something that people might have to face and they might not turn up to work. What will you do? Some people may not have a very huge liability, but others, they have a very huge liability. And for every day, the interest that you pay might be a tidy sum. It will be a small fortune. Can you afford to take that kind of a chance? The client is relying on you. Can you afford to let him down? He will never come back to you. Apart from that, you need to invest in hardware and software. Before the session started, we were just chit-chatting and we were saying that, the ASPs and the GSPs are a very, very, I would say, a lot for which you would have a lot of sympathy. The reason being because practically every month, whatever they have done in the previous month, literally speaking, goes down the drain. Because they have done something and then GSTN comes and says, okay, now this has been scrapped, you need to do something different. This validation was there, but that is not there. In fact, I remember having one discussion with our ASP and he said that yes, there is. So what they had done is that this was during the initial days of GSTR 3B. And the instance was that they had changed the offline utility for filing 3B. Now, something that they changed in that also impacted the utility for GSTR 1. And it was supposed to impact only the offline utility, but because of the validations that they put in, even the people who are actually going through the ASPs started facing a problem. When they called up GSTN, they said, yes, we know there is a problem, but we don't know where it is. Now, I don't know whether it is a fact or not, but that is the response that we got. Now you imagine there is so many things that they are looking at. If they want to resolve it in that, if they can't resolve it in a 5-day period, how do you resolve it in 5-day period? So everybody is constantly required to upgrade their hardware, their software. And considering that if you're doing multiple compliances, if you're doing it under the company law, you're doing it under income tax. From what I hear from some of my friends is that, if you want to do company law related compliances, you need a PC which is an old PC, which is going to handle Excel 2007, Windows 7. Only then you will be able to do a compliance. If you want to do GST compliance and you want to do matching of J1, J2, sorry, the GSTR2 details, I have been recommending to people that you should get the latest version of Excel because there are several options available in that which you can use it. And my friend said that if I do that, I'll have to stop all other work. I know of other people who say that, this PC is for company law, this PC is for income tax, and that PC is for GST. Now, I don't know how many small-time consultants can afford to have this kind of a luxury. Anyways, apart from that, taxpayers have an onerous burden for every mistake that you make. There is a huge impact of interest. You have to answer to so many queries from the department, even for the smallest things. I mean, be it e-way bill, be it your GSTR returns, for the smallest of things. In fact, today morning I was talking to one of our clients, and his team member said that, the chance of this error happening is 0.05%. It was just a statistic that he threw to us to say it's a 0.5%. I said, can you open up the notice that you got day before yesterday? So he has received a notice from the Gujarat state authorities wherein they have said that there is a mismatch between his GSTR 3B and GSTR 1. I said, please open up that particular notice and read the figures that they have given. I don't know how many of you have noticed it, but the figure that they gave was with a 6 decimal point accuracy. So apart from the fact that when you compare it, you see that it is a 5,000.000001 rupee difference. And my man is telling me that, there's a 0.5% chance that I will make a mistake. They are tracking it to that level, and this is the uncertainty that we have to face. Now, on one hand, they are trying to reduce litigation to say that, this is not material enough, and on the other hand, they are raising notices for such small amounts also. Moving on. What are the challenges? What are the changes that we had recommended to GSTN? We said that the present process is very, very complex. The system is very, very rigid. It is inflexible, and there are several instances that you need to consider before you can proceed on this. If you keep it so difficult, compliance is not going to be easy. There are going to be defaults, rank and file. You will not have many people who will be able to fully comply even though they want to comply. There is a very lengthy process which is involved in compliance. You need to make it simpler because the manner in which you are going about with it, there are several people who are not very big. They are very small. They have meager resources. For them to follow this process is not very easy. They don't have discipline. They don't have educated. They don't have informed persons who will be able to follow through the process. Not everybody can afford to hire a chartered accountant. In fact, from what I remember, in one of the meetings when GST was being implemented, a very high-ranking officer happened to comment publicly to say it is these chartered accountants who are creating so much negativity about this process. He was actually pulled up in public to say that you are wrong. You need to sit and do this process. In fact, I remember from some of the old news articles that some commissioners were actually told that you please sit and try and file the return. And if you are able to file the return, then we will accept it is our fault. And as it turned out, they were not even able to upload one single return. So imagine at that point of time, they were saying the CAs are wrong. Now the government is saying GSTN let us down. GSTN is saying the government has let us down. So on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is that nobody is recognizing that the process is so lengthy. You are asking for so much amount of information. You should have taken a step-by-step approach before going to that level. Sufficient time needs to be given for compliance. I mentioned to you that this client of mine has data and within 5-day period he has to do that compliance. I mean, he has no choice. If he doesn't, he will either lose out on credit or he will not be filing a correct return. And who, at the end of the day, the government is going to say, you had everything in your possession. Why didn't you file a return? In fact, I recall a case delivered by, I think, I'm not sure, the CSTAT just 2 or 3 days ago in case of SIFI. And this case was in the matter where SIFI has not paid service tax on the TDS amount which was withheld by their customer. And their argument to the tribunal was that please do not levy a penalty because there was a problem in our software. We did not record this and we didn't know about it. As soon as we came to know, we have paid it. And the CSTAT has given a ruling to say that the software did not have the capability or there was a mistake in the software is not an excuse. And you are liable to pay penalty. Now those are the circumstances under which we have to work. The reconciliation and the matching process is not so easy. It needs to be simplified. While they kept on saying that, it will be auto-populated and you'll be able to do it. I don't know how many of you have actually tried to do a matching of the data between the 2A and your own purchase register. So there are several tools which are available, but if you are doing it manually, trust me, it's a huge exercise. And it depends on the people who have supplied goods and services, on the team which has actually recorded those inward supplies. If there is even one item missing in the data, be it the date, be it the invoice number, if he has clubbed 2 invoices together and put it, or if he has recorded the value in a different manner, you are going to be head over heels trying to match the data. We have been doing it for some people, and I can tell you, sometimes people who are disciplined, you are able to do it immediately. The other people, you can keep on working hours and hours. You can keep on sifting through data and you'll never be able to do it. So there was a small code that I wrote for a client of ours and we tried to match it. It worked beautifully up to a certain point of time, but when it was common date and common amounts, or if it was just common amounts over a period of time, you would still never get that data. So you need to be very careful. This is something that has already been highlighted, but the government is not really paying attention to it. Another thing that we have been asking the government is, please give us the option to rectify the returns. In VAT, you had an option to revise the returns. In service tax, you had the option to revise the returns. But in GST, there is no option to revise the return. In fact, there would have been several instances. I think in many of our clients, almost every month, you will have some or the other mismatch between GSTR 1 and 3B. Now, the reason why you have a mismatch between 3B and 1 is that you're trying to rectify the earlier period's return. Now imagine you made a mistake once that will cascade into the next month. You rectified it in that month, but you left out something else that will cascade into next month. And for each of these 3 months, you will get a separate notice. And you will have to sit and explain to somebody who doesn't want to be reasonable with you. Several times we have placed this request that you should allow us to revise the returns, but they have not heeded. The other and most important part of the GST filing return is the input tax credit, and that is at the heart of the entire process. The reason why you are uploading so much amount of data is because the government is saying that we want to have full control about what is the tax liability, what is the input tax credit which is available. Only those items which match we will allow. And for this matching process, they say that if the recipient has claimed it but the supplier has not uploaded the data, then you have 2 months maximum to get it resolved. If not, then the credit will be reversed. Now, there have been several instances where representations have gone to the government to say that, what is the mistake of the recipient? Why are you placing such an onerous burden? In fact, one of the reasons why this was put up in the representation is the classic example that was given to the government was, you look at the TDS provisions in income tax. Of course, it has taken some time to come to the position that it is today. But under TDS, there are 2 things which any person who has received money whose TDS has been withheld by the payer is certain about. Number one, if the tax has been deducted, he will definitely get the credit at some point of time or the other. In fact, the law actually provides that if the tax has been deducted and it has not been deposited, then the deductee at the most will not be granted the credit. At the most, he will not be granted credit, but no recovery will be done of that amount. There is a specific provision in income tax. The income tax law goes on further to say that at any point of time, if that person pays it, he agrees to it, you will get the credit. There is no interest, there is no penalty burden on you. But you look at the GST provisions. They have, of course, taken a leaf from Maharashtra, Mahalakshmi Cotton, wherein they have not only imposed a burden of interest, but there is a likelihood of penalty also coming and visiting you to say that you have claimed credit without any basis. In fact, when you look at the proposed amendment, they have gone so far as to say that the recipient and the supplier, both of them are jointly and severally liable. Now, that to my mind is very, very onerous. It's very, very harsh. Some of the suggestions that we gave to the government, I'm sorry, the font is very small, but I try to squeeze everything on one screen. Some of the suggestions that we gave to the government is that, first of all, get rid of the multiple returns. You need to have one single return. The fact that people have to file 3 returns is creating a lot of problems. So the government kept on saying that you are actually filing only one return. You're filing it in 3 parts. So, of course, today also you are not going to be any different when you look at the new formats. You're still going to be doing the same thing, but in a different manner. The second thing that was requested from the government is that let there be a statement of ITC mismatch. This was a suggestion which went through from BCAS, where he said that, why don't you allow there to be a process wherein, first of all, let the taxpayers claim it on a self-assessment basis. Thereafter, you provide the data, we will come up with a statement which is a ITC mismatch statement, and on that basis, thereafter, you can make whatever efforts are there to recover. If it is not recovered, then we will look at what has to be done. Another request was that please do away with the interest burden. As far as we are concerned, we have paid the tax. The fact that that fellow has defaulted, you cannot penalize me for that. You can't cast the burden on me. When you look at the proposed amendment and not the bill, in the proposed amendment, they had somewhere said, no, that was 16.2. But this interest burden has still remained. The other thing that was requested is that you look at the periodicity. Please change the periodicity. Please make it quarterly. Here too, the government was saying this is not possible. There is a revenue consideration. If you make it quarterly, it might not happen. Then the fact was that why don't you make it quarterly for smaller taxpayers? So if you go back to the image that I shown to you, you had cars and you had 2-wheelers. That's the smaller taxpayers. I mean, if you look at the matrix of taxpayers in GSTN, in terms of numbers, the small taxpayers they outnumber the large taxpayers. In terms of tax payment, it is the large taxpayers who actually pay more tax than the smaller taxpayers. So the government was told that why don't you get into a situation where the smaller taxpayers are told to file returns less frequently. That way you will reduce the traffic. That way you will reduce the burden. And at the same time, you will have achieved your objective of getting the returns. Now the question was, who is the small taxpayer? So our suggestion was that, why don't you keep the definition of a small taxpayer in line with what the other laws are? You make an SME somebody with a turnover of less than 50 crore rupees. That way you will have brought down almost 80% of the people in the quarterly bracket. Another suggestion that went through was, please don't ask us to upload the data. Please don't ask us to do a reconciliation. Let it be unidirectional. Now, this was again based on the TDS experience where if you look at it, the system is very, very stable. They have several controls in place. For all practical purposes, the deductee is able to claim the credit of whatever taxes have been withheld. The onus and the burden has been put up on the deductor. There is no process of matching, there is no process of claiming, there is no process of accept reject. And then too, that system is working perfectly in income tax. This was a suggestion which went through. Please keep it at one level, don't keep it at two levels. Of course, if you keep it at two levels, I give you the example of what happened in GSTR 6. That is a very, very distinct possibility. The other suggestion was that please allow us to make periodic amendments to the returns, periodic amendments to the ITC, so that it doesn't become a very heavy burden. So let's see how far this process is helping us. Now what I'm talking to you about is the new returns. To begin with, when you look at the returns, there are three specific parts that you need to look at. Okay, every return comes with a questionnaire, it comes with an annexure, and then you have the main return. Now, during one of our interactions with the GSTN CEO, he said that when we had originally proposed the return filing process, we said that let it be a questionnaire based process, because what will happen is that if you allow us to put a questionnaire, we'll have the right tables tabulated and only the relevant tables will come up. That way these people don't have to bother about the other tables. Okay, so to that extent they have kept the questionnaire. In terms of the process, you are first supposed to fill up the annexure. Basis the annexure, the return will be auto populated. Okay, we will look at the annexures, we will look at the returns also. First, let us look at what are the 2 or 3 new things that they have introduced. Okay, I'm just keeping the slide in this particular format because otherwise I'll not be able to switch the documents. Okay, first of all, what they have done is that they have defined different classes of taxpayers and they have defined the periodicity for the taxpayers. Okay, they have defined that there will be a monthly return, there will be a quarterly return. The quarterly return will be restricted to those people who have a turnover of less than 5 crore rupees. Apart from your monthly and quarterly return, what they have also said that you will have 2 separate returns, which is the Sahaj and the Sugam return. The idea behind the Sahaj and the Sugam return is that ultimately if somebody doesn't need to upload all the data, then there is no need to go through the entire return. Right at the outset, you answer the relevant questions and the form will be generated. If you say that I'm a trader, I'm not making any B2B supplies, I'm making only B2C supplies, there is no need for that person to give so many lines of data or at least scroll through that much amount of information. Just give the B2C data and you are done with it. If you say I'm making B2C plus B2B information to a certain extent, then you have a smaller return. But if you say that I am actually doing a lot of business, I have a lot of B2B supplies, I have a lot of B2C supplies, I have exports, I have SEZ related transactions, I have deemed export transactions, then you have to go through the full-fledged return. In order to reach the returns, you need to first fill up the questionnaire. So what does the questionnaire look like? Is it visible to you right up to the end? So it asks you some very basic questions. Do you have B2C supplies? Do you have B2B supplies? Have you made exports with payment of tax? Have you made exports without payment of tax? Have you made supplies to SEZ units or developers with or without payment of tax? Have you supplied to people, and has it been considered as a deemed export? Do you have services or supplies, inward supplies, which attract reverse charge? Have you imported services? Have you imported goods? This is a separate detail that they are asking. Have you imported goods from SEZ on bill of entry? So this form is actually in public domain, so you can just take it from there. There's no need to take a snap. Has your supplier uploaded invoice? Has your supplier not uploaded invoices on which you have claimed input credit for 2 tax periods? So this is something which is new. Okay. And the next thing, have you made any supplies through e-commerce portals? You need to know that by default, answer to each and every one of this question is no. You have to elect to say yes. Okay. By default, each and every answer is no. You have to elect to say yes. If you say yes, then the right table will be activated. So for those of you who have been filing ST3 returns under service tax in the last 2 years, you would have noted that when you started, first of all, you needed to give your service tax registration number. You had to give whether you are a firm or you are a company. Depending on your input, it would create a table which would have either a quarterly liability or a quarterly reporting or a monthly reporting. You would actually have to select to say what are the different services that you are opting for. Depending on that, there would be a separate tab which would be opened. You actually had to select to say whether I'm a recipient of service or I'm a provider of service. Am I availing a notification benefit or I'm not availing a benefit of a notification? Depending on all of that, the validations used to take place. To a certain extent, this is going down the same logic that depending on what you respond or what you provide as an input, it will allow you to access a table or not. Okay. Now what you're seeing on the screen is the main annexure. Okay. The first part is fairly standard. It is no different than what you see in your GSTR 3B. The only different thing which appears is your trade name, your ARN and date of ARN, which of course will be available after the return has been filed. Okay. Now when you look at the table per se, the columns that you're looking at are more or less the same as they were in your GSTR 1. There's hardly any difference. It is more or less the same thing. At the most, what they have done is that they have shifted the columns from the right to the left. So your classic place being your place of supply. So they have linked it just next to the GSTN number. Otherwise, all the other data that you are putting, the only one data or rather 2 data which are missing in this column is your HSN number and unit of measure, the quantitative details. What they have on the screen, what they have put in the form is all that information that you need to match your invoices. Of course, you don't match your place of supply, you match your GSTN and you match the document number, the date, the value, the taxes paid, so on and so forth. But that's all. Those are the main columns that are there. Okay. You need to give in separate parts of the table supplies made to consumers and unregistered persons, supplies made to registered persons other than those attracting reverse charge, exports without payment, exports with payment, supplies to SEZ with payment, without payment. Now for all practical purposes in GSTR 1, SEZ supplies were clubbed with supplies with B2B. Now you have a separate table for this. So that's just a cosmetic change. It's not much of a change. After the outward supply, you have all the reverse charge related and inward supply related data. Again, the information, if you see the headings of the table remains the same. There is no change. So you have to first provide data of inward supplies on which reverse charge is applicable, import of services, import of goods from SEZ on a bill of entry, and 3L is the new item. Now mind you, this would have normally been part of your GSTR 2 or probably 3, mostly 2, because that's where the details of your input credit were being tabulated. That's where the details of your inward supplies were being tabulated. Now this is forming part of your annexure. You are giving these details separately. For all practical purposes, under the old routine, this was going to be auto-populated and this would have been added to your output tax liability. because after you would have matched, they would have checked it within their system. If there was a mismatch, then after 2 months, there would be a auto reversal. Now, to this extent, they have said missing invoices on which credit has been claimed in T minus 2, means that tax period minus 2 months prior, and the supplier has not reported the same till the date of filing this return. So if you go through the explanatory notes which are available, what they are saying is that you may file it in this month. You are allowed a 2-month period to get your supplier to upload his data. If he uploads his data, then you will be able to claim the credit. But if he has not uploaded in 2 months, then you need to do a reversal. Of course, you have all those questions that what happens to persons who are uploading on a quarterly basis. We'll come to the return filing and the filling up of the annexure a little differently, after some time. I just want to go through the annexures to say first what data you are going to upload. Okay. Then you have data related to supplies made through e-commerce operators where TCS is collected. And of course, the most hated HSN summary. So one of the things which was asked to them just after the forms were released, that why are you so obsessed with HSN? In fact, now HSN has gone to a different level. The reason being because if you look at the old notifications which were there, they said that if you have a turnover less than a certain amount, you don't need to keep track of HSN. You don't need to mention HSN. If you have a turnover up to a certain limit, you need to talk about 2 digits. Beyond that, you need to keep 4 digits. Of course, on the field, when you go to see, when you're looking at the data, in some commodities, you have a situation where for the same 4-digit HSN, you might have a different rate. And if you try to fill it up in the return, you would not be able to upload it. At which point of time you were forced to put either 5, 6, 7 or 8 digits so that you could have it. So there are some people where they had 3 different rates for the same goods, or rather for the same HSN. And they had 3 different HSNs which they used to put in the summary. But these are all large players. What happens to smaller players? They were till now being exempted, but now the mandate is that everybody needs to fill up this HSN summary. Everybody needs to fill up 4 digits of HSN. You need to keep track and you need to upload it. During our conversation with the GSTN CEO, he said that we were asked recently that can you give us data about this particular HSN, and we want to see what is the variance which is coming in the data. He said when we pulled out the data and we tried to match it rate wise or the category of supplies which were being made, and in many places it made absolutely no sense. It made absolutely no sense. Recently we came across one situation. A client of ours asked that you please tell me what is the HSN or the SAC for a particular invoice that he sent to us. He said we are taking a factory along with plant and machinery on rent. Please tell me what is the HSN. There was an internal debate going on that should I quote the HSN for the renting of the property or should I quote the HSN for the renting of the machine. I asked him, do you have a separate consideration? Do you have one single consideration? He said it's one single consideration. It is for both. There's no way that I'm going to separate it. There's no need for me to separate it. I said, you are not covered in either of the 2 HSNs. You please go to the residuary category. Not that it makes any difference. The rate of tax remains the same. But when you're reporting, what will you report? You want to be as precise as possible, but they have not really thought about these situations. What do you do? You're bound to get some of the other answer which is going to be off the track. Then comes the verification. So for the first time ever, at least as far as the return filing scenario is concerned across legislations, be it income tax, be it service tax, VAT, excise, and now GST, for the first time ever, taxpayers will be given a facility that if you want to file a nil return, you can file a nil return by sending an SMS. Now, many people will say, that's such a convenient gesture that has been, or such a convenient feature that has been provided for. All I need to do is just file an SMS. Is it that simple? I mean, for all practical purposes, of course, they have you will be able to do that only from one single phone. Smaller taxpayers, whether they will maintain that phone, they will not maintain that phone, that is a question mark. Of course, they'll have to be more disciplined enough, but they will be able to do it. Now, your second thing that you look at, if you look at any return that you file, whether you file it electronically, whether you file it manually, at the bottom of every return, you have this verification statement. When I send an SMS, am I going to be giving this verification? Am I going to be signing this? How is the government going to ensure that whatever I have stated is right or not? I can very easily say that, my 5-year-old son picked up the phone and he just sent that SMS. What do I do? Kids nowadays are smart. They can unlock the phone and they can just randomly send without realizing what the repercussions can be. I mean, who takes responsibility for that? Somebody might say that, I'd left my phone unattended and some disgruntled employee of mine sent that SMS. You can have several situations. There is no provision for that. The fact of the matter is that there is no provision whatsoever to say that when that SMS has been sent, it is verified. Let's come back to what are some of the novel features that the return has got. Okay. Of course, like you are providing currently, you will provide the details of outward supplies, imports, inward supplies, those attracting reverse charge. There are detailed instructions given for that. Depending on what you fill in the annexure, what you saw in front of you, this was the annexure. Now this annexure will be available to you for all practical purposes. The one big change that is now going to happen when these returns are implemented is that you will be able to upload data on a day-to-day basis, on a real-time basis. So if you are geared enough, you might have a situation, you raise the bill and it has gone and been saved on the GSTN. You can have that situation also. The reason why they have done it. So one of the things that we hear that while the government says that, we have solved your problem, we have allowed you to upload data on a real-time basis, whatever data you upload on a real-time basis will be available to your customer on a real-time basis. Fact of the matter is that when you go to see the process, it may not be as simple as that because right now the interface is not yet available. But the real problem that they have solved is their own. They have not solved any of our problems. The problem that they have solved is the traffic jam on the last few days of filing. One of the biggest problems that large taxpayers had is that you expect me to file my GSTR 1 by the 10th. By the time my accounts are done, by the time my MIS is done, by the time I'm able to arrive at a figure, it is the 5th of the month. In 5 days or maybe less, and we have a couple of customers who actually give us the data only on the last date because they have to collate data from 5 different sources. By the time it comes to them, there are several checks that they want to do. They want to ensure that all their GLs are perfectly matching. They are very, very sensitive. They don't want to upload anything which is incorrect. They are very, very sensitive. We have to upload within time. But they will give me the data on the last date after lunch only. Now, even then, we try and help them as much as possible and they appreciate it. They never say no. They say that you have been there. We appreciate it. You people are taking effort. How do we speed up? So far as we are concerned, we can at the most tell them that, on a daily basis, you will now be able to upload it. This facility was not really available earlier. It could have been done, but it was not really available. Now they can do it in a situation where they can upload it on a daily basis. There are some instances where in some cases we often tease some of our colleagues that you please upload your data last, because the moment you upload your data, all our returns will be stuck. The system will be jammed. Please wait for us to upload. You do it last. The reason being because large amounts of data takes a lot of time. There have been times when we have been telling our customers that you please split up your data. There is no need for you to upload it. If you upload it together, there are so many checks which will happen. the same data which would normally take you half an hour to upload will get uploaded in 2 hours time. Why do you want to waste 2 hours instead of half an hour? He said, I don't want to take a risk. I don't want to create a separate table. If there is some mistake in splitting the table and uploading the data, and if something gets missed out, who's responsible? I don't want to sit and reconcile. I don't want to maintain separate datas. This is the output report I'm getting. Everything is fitting fine. I want you to upload it as it is. For those kind of customers, this feature will be perfect to say that, okay, you got it ready. Let us check it. Let us upload it. Of course, there is a marker available within the GSTN so that you cannot upload duplicate data. To that extent, you are safe on that part. But mind you, you are uploading data on a real-time basis. If there is a mistake, it is uploaded as it is. And if for whatever be the reason your customer has seen the data and he has accepted it, that invoice is locked. So real-time upload has real-time problems also. Whatever you upload will ultimately get summarized and auto-populated in the main return. So what you're seeing on the screen is the main return, which is a summary of whatever you have uploaded in the annexure. Okay. For all practical purposes, there is a correlation that it is coming from some table, and it says the value is automatic. Okay. There are some parts where it is not automatic. So most of the details that you have in your outward supply will be automatic. Details as regards your advances. Any advances received, any adjustment of advances, that is going to be a manual exercise. Now, for all practical purposes, it is just one figure that you have to punch in, but you still need to have a reconciliation of what were the advances received earlier, what you have adjusted in the current period. If it was received in the current period and adjusted in the current period, definitely you will not provide for it here. But if there was a skipping in the period, that is to say you received advance earlier and in the next month you adjusted it, this is where you will have to report it. The next part that you have to report manually is details of exempt and nil rated supplies, your non-GST supplies, and no supply as per Schedule 3, Section 7. This is a new entry which has come into the returns. This was not there earlier. Okay. Same way, if you go to see in the inward supply also, most of the data is auto-populated. So somewhere when you're looking at it, it gives you the reminder of what GSTR2 was supposed to be. The GSTR2 which they said will work and which has till date not worked. When you look at the GSTR2A also, to a certain extent, you're not very happy about the data that you get in that. So most of the data that your supplier had provided will get auto-populated out over here. There is one more annexure which is related to inward supplies, on how the data related to inward supplies is going to be tabulated, how you will accept, reject. I'll just come to that in a minute. I just wanted to point out which are the supplies which are going to be manual data entry. So the first amount is the one that you will actually fill manually for the first time when you fill the first return. After that, it is going to be auto-populated. So what this basically means is that if you look at Section 16 of the CGST Act, it says that you are entitled to take the credit only when you have, number one, the invoice in your possession, when you have received the goods or services, when you have, the opposite person has filed the returns, when you have filed your returns, he has paid the tax, so on and so forth. Now, one question that has been a matter of debate, and in fact, yesterday at the study circle, we were having a good debate on that. was that when you look at certain supplies, and specifically in case of services, whether you will claim the credit as soon as you get the invoice or not. So two classic examples that you can talk about. BCAS is conducting a seminar, and for the seminar you have paid certain fees. This is one example. Take another example. You're traveling from say Bombay to let's say Lahore. You want to attend Imran Khan's swearing in ceremony, like Mr. Sidhu, and you had purchased a ticket, and at the last minute you realize that there is some problem and you don't want to travel. Now you have paid for the ticket, you have paid taxes on that. The ticket is non-refundable. Can you say I've received the service? Should you be claiming this? Now that is one question. You take the example of BCS. BCS is holding a seminar 15 days from now. I paid the services. I paid for the seminar today. I have received a kit. Can I say I have received the service? Should I be filling up this? Should I be claiming it? Or should I say that this is an invoice that I have received but I have not received the service, or I have not received the goods, therefore I'll carry it forward to the next month? You might face those problems once we start filing this return. This was one piece of information which was not being asked from us when we were filing the returns in the current scenario. Now you will be required to answer this question. Now this is an auto-populated item which will come from your previous return, but in the first return you will have to file it on your own. So this is one piece of information that you will actually have to capture separately. Next is import of goods from SEZ units and supplies not uploaded by suppliers. Now they are provided for this. One needs to see what information you will provide out over here and how much detail you will provide out over here. Is this going to be a situation where you can actually say that these are the suppliers whom you need to pursue and go and take, collect the tax from them? Or is it going to be that these are the suppliers that I have received, that fellow has not uploaded the data, you straight away go and deny the credit for me? We'll have to see how it works out. The next thing is supplies not eligible for credit, including ISD credits. So this is again a self-reporting mechanism where you need to say which are the credits that I'm not eligible to take. Supplies uploaded by suppliers on which credit has already been claimed in the previous tax period. So in the earlier part of the annexure, we saw the last item in the annexure which said that those supplies wherein on a T-2 basis the supplier has not uploaded the data and you are claiming the credit. So just think about it. In the month of April you received a supply. You uploaded the data of the supply received in the month of April. Your supplier did not upload it in April. He did not upload it in May, but he definitely uploaded it in June. Now that is something that you will report out over here, that you have already claimed that credit and you are not going to claim it again. This is the converse of the first item that we saw, supplies on which credit is available but I have not received the goods or services. So for all practical purposes, what you fill up over here will be carried forward to the next month and it will be available to you. Otherwise, in all practical purposes, this is a self-reported item. Any reversals of input tax credit on account of 37, 39, 42 and 43, you will have to put out over here. Other ITC, including adjustment of ITC on account of transition from composition to normal, again is a manual input that you will put. The net effect of all the credits will be auto-calculated, but it will remain to be a editable figure. So again, you will be able to change that figure in case there is a different figure. Input tax credit on account of capital goods, reporting only for not credited to electronic credit ledger. So this we'll have to see what are these, because if these are normal supplies from a domestic supplier, they should always get reported. Probably these are imports, but even if it is import, it should have come by way of a bill of entry. One will need to see what this pertains to. Then the usual items like TDS and TCS credits received, interest payment, interest liability. And then finally, the payment of tax table, and this you are all familiar. This is the same table that you see in 3B. It's no different from that. If you claimed any refund, then adjustment of that and the verification. Now let's go very quickly to the annexure related to inward supplies. Again, this is like GSTR2 where they have said most of the details will be auto drafted. You will get supplies from somebody else's GSTR1 and GSTR5 and 6 also. Most of it is auto populated. If you see the table out over here, it is far more detailed compared to what you give in your outward supply. The 2 or 3 things that they have added out over here is they have added the trader's name. Okay, so one common complaint which everybody had is that you're giving me data on a GSTN basis, but I don't know who the trader is. And there have been instances where I have attributed GSTN to some other trader also. So one of the exercises that we do when we are doing a matching of GSTR 2A versus our purchase register, we first look at the GSTN numbers and validate it to see whether the name captured is the same name or is it a different name. We also try and see that if the same GSTN has multiple names attached to it, or multiple names, or one particular name has got multiple GSTNs attached to it. We try to understand whether or not there is any duplication of data or there is error in capturing of data. To a certain extent, you might not need to do that exercise because you will get the data straight off from the GSTN itself. Now, apart from that, you have the accept reject column available just next to your inward supplies. So the manner in which the process has been described in the commentary, it says that this data will come to you auto-populated. There is no question of you adding any missing supplies. Only that which comes into your ledger, you will be able to claim that. There is no question of you adding any more. Whatever comes, you have 3 options: accept, reject, or keep pending. If you keep pending, it will get carried forward to the next period. If you accept, it will add to your credit. If you reject, there is no question of getting credit. You will get credit of only those invoices which you actually accept. Now, apart from accepting the credit, you need to put the value of how much credit you are claiming. So if the credit flowing to you is 100 rupees, but you are claiming credit of only 50 rupees, then you actually need to manually punch in that data. So let's take the example of bank. Practically everything that they receive is at 50%. Will they be putting in 50% for practically each and every invoice? Banks, NBFCs are classic case in point. Let's take another situation. You might have a situation where you have paid only in part to your supplier. You will have to put that manually. You will actually need to identify each and every item and thereafter punch in the data to say this I'm taking only part credit. So you will punch in data for all the services received from registered persons, for supplies received from SEZs on bill of entry, on import of goods. You should normally get most of this data through the system itself. IceGate is going to be linked. All the other databases are also going to be linked. Then the ISD credits. Again, over here also you have to say what you are accepting, what you are rejecting. Depending on what you fill out over here, all this data will go and sit in the main return. Now, the manner in which the process has been described, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with the dates. While I can keep on uploading my data on a day-to-day basis, the data will keep on getting added to my database. It will keep on getting added to my return for that particular tax period. On the 10th of the month, there is a cutoff. Whatever data is uploaded for that month up to the 10th of that month will get calculated as my outward liability. What I upload on the 11th will become part of next month's credit for the recipient. It will still be a part of this month's liability, and I'll have to pay it with interest if I don't pay it on time. So you will have a situation where while it gets calculated for all tax purposes and interest purposes in the same month, in which I have raised the invoice but uploaded the data after the 10th. But my recipient will get the credit only in the next month, not in the same month. So to a certain extent, if you go to see, this is the same thing that you had in GSTR1 also. What you upload up to the 10th will flow into that fellow's credit by the 11th. What you upload up to 10th will be auto drafted in the annexure for inward supplies by the 11th. You have 10 days to accept or reject and thereafter come to your liability. So what really has changed apart from everything else is that you have got only 5 days more to do your accept reject. The data that you have to compile is more or less the same. The amount of pain that you will have to go through to verify the data is the same. Only thing you have got 5 days more. So that was one small request that we asked, that give us more time, that they have accepted. Whether that's going to be practical or not, that one needs to see. Now in the accept reject scenario also, what they have said is that by default everything will be accept. You actually have to elect and say it is reject or it is pending. By default it is going to be accept. So to that extent they are saying that we have reduced your burden. Now you might have a situation, among 10,000 invoices there is one particular supply which you never received and you went and accepted it. The poor fellow who has actually supplied to you, or rather supplied to somebody else, will not be able to amend it unless you unlock it. The moment you accept it or deemed acceptance, the invoice will get locked. He cannot change it. So your action as well as inaction will cause problem to somebody else. You have to be very careful on that. Let's have a look at the other two returns, which are the smaller returns, which is the Sahaj and the Sugam. Whatever questions we have got as far as the filing process is concerned, let's take it up after 10 minutes. Very quickly, I'll run through the Sahaj and Sugam. The quarterly return also to a larger extent is more or less the same. There is not much of a difference. Only difference is that as far as the person covered under the quarterly liability, he has to pay his taxes on a monthly basis, but he has to file his return on a quarterly basis. So to a certain extent, you are going to be like the service tax regime, where you paid your taxes on a monthly basis, but you file your return on a 6 monthly basis. Or for that matter, when you look at smaller taxpayers like firms and individuals, they paid their taxes on a quarterly basis, but they file their returns on a 6 monthly basis. So to that extent, you will be on a similar ground. Of course, people are saying that why do you want me to have so many due dates? But that's the way it is, and it's not so different when you go to see income tax also. You pay taxes in 4 installments and you file one return. So how far that is different from this? Of course, that is summary data versus this is detailed information. So this is the annexure for amendments to return. Now, one more feature that they have added to the compliance process is you can actually amend the return. The process of amendment is quite similar to what you had under Maharashtra value added tax. Until about 4 years ago, you could amend the return as many times as you wanted. Then about 2 or 3 years ago, they said that you can amend it only once. And about last year, they said that, okay, we'll allow you to amend it twice. So in GST, they have said that we'll allow you to amend the return at least twice, or rather maximum 2 times. They have said that you please be sure of what you are amending, because after 2 times we will not allow you to amend it anymore. So you please take your time in amending. Now, one thing that you have to be very, very careful about when you talk about amendment is that somewhere in the whole scheme of things, they have provided that if the amendment is resulting in a difference in the tax liability of more than 10%, you might end up with a higher late fee. I'll just come to that. there is a upper cap of 10% of liability. If the amendment is resulting in more than 10% of additional liability, you will end up paying a higher fee for making the amendment, and that is apart from the interest that you're already paying. So this is something else that they've added. This is another burden that they've added. You need to be careful. So this is the return where you're making only B2C supplies. So you're talking about small traders. You may be, you don't make any supplies to registered persons. There's no chance of making any. It is a consumable item where there is no chance of making a supply to a registered person. The standard data that you need to fill is the same: your name, name, GSTN number, so on and so forth. And all you need to give is very, very basic data, just like you fill up even today in the B2C column. You need to give data of local versus interstate. You just need to split it up. You need to give data of inward supplies separately. Again, this will be auto-populated because while you are making supplies to consumers, you may be receiving supplies from businesses, in which case you want to claim credit. So for that, you will still have to go through the rigor of the annexure for inward supplies. Coming to the next part where you are making B2C plus B2B supplies, but to persons other than SEZs, other than exports and deemed exports. So the table is to a certain extent truncated. You don't have to report anything as far as SEZ supplies or exports and other supplies are concerned. You just need to give supplies of B2B and B2C. The data that you need to provide remains the same. You need to give an HSN summary as usual. And of course, the inward supplies will flow to you from your annexure. Now, to what extent I would say that the expectations have been met. Is the present system rigid? Is it inflexible? Yes, it is inflexible. Is the process lengthy? Yes, it is lengthy. Does it give you sufficient time? No, it doesn't give you sufficient time. Reconciliation matching process, has it been kept only on one side? To a certain extent, yes, I can say that. It has been kept unidirectional. The flow is from the supplier to the recipient, but you still do not have a control to say if he has not uploaded any data, then what happens to it. Option to rectify is available to you. You have 2 revisions that you can do. It's a very, very limited window that you have got. You have to be careful. The concept of provisional credit is now being done away with completely. You will be able to take only that credit which flows into your account, irrespective of the fact that you have paid for that tax. Only that credit which is flowing into account you will be able to do. You will not be able to add any single invoice. You will not be able to add any single paisa for any service that you have received, but for which the supplier is in default. To a certain extent, yes, they have consolidated the returns. They have made it into one single form. But while the return is consolidated, they have added the annexures. So what you had GSTR1 is the annexure to main return. What was your GSTR2 is actually annexure of inward supplies. And your GSTR3 is your main return. So to that extent, we need to understand this is a complete eyewash. Nothing has changed. You're still going to do the same thing, only thing in a different manner. To a certain extent, you have a statement of mismatches which you will be uploading. The interest related relief which was asked for, which we have been saying, but that is not available. The periodicity, to a certain extent, yes, there is a relief. So Smaller taxpayers can now file on a quarterly basis. Larger taxpayers have 5 more days to match their input credit. It's hardly a relief. There is no need for you to upload the invoice. While that seems like a good feature, you have actually cut your hands and legs, because now you can't add any supplies where they have not uploaded the data. You can claim only that credit which the supplier has uploaded and which the GSTN in its whims and fancies will throw in your credit ledger. I'm saying it with a bit of a caveat, because at the end of the day, it's a man-made system. It will definitely have some flaws, and you don't know what comes in your account, what doesn't come in your account. We actually had a situation where we were told by the supplier, I have uploaded, I don't know why it is not coming in your account. So he actually showed us the acknowledgement. He said, I'm giving you my login, you go and see, you can see everything is there. I don't know why it is not coming. So it was a ticket that we have flagged. We still don't have an answer. The process has been made singular. It is only the suppliers who will upload the data. For us, we have to only check the data. We have to accept, reject, and keep it pending. Periodic adjustment to a certain extent, it seems that it is available, but one will have to look at the process and see whether or not it is actually available or not. With that, I would like to end this presentation. I will take your questions and any other things which you think I have not spoken about in my presentation, but you would like me to talk about it. Please let me know. Thank you.
One very basic question. In main return, there is 2 annexure. In bottom of the annexure, there is a authorized signatory is required. So for filing one return, I need to sign 3 times.
I did say that for all practical purposes, we are going to do compliance with 3 times. Nothing has changed.
Yes.
So,
single uploading or multiple uploading?
As far as outward supplies are concerned, it depends on you. You can upload all the data on one day, or you can upload it every day. It's all up to you.
But I want that part of the annexures to the main return.
Hmm.
Whether that once, because in the VAT wall, what is happening that we are preparing the annexure 1 and annexure 2, and it captures in the return, and then we are uploading the single uploading return.
Yes.
Here it will be the same thing, because I need not to upload first annexure 1, then annexure 2, and then the 3. That we have to
So
see
annexure, no, to that extent, annexure 1 will be uploaded by the 10th. Annexure 2 will flow to you after the 11th only. So to that extent, it is still a 2-step process.
2 steps process.
Yes. Before September of next year. Time limit of section 39. So if it is a return pertaining to 18, 19, maximum you could revise it up to September 19. So if you're filing monthly, each and every monthly return, you can revise it 2 times up to September. I think that's quite a bit.
You said the lock-in could be real time, because though, as larger companies would have liked it to happen that way, because many times they link payment to your uploading and the company locking it. But when we read the fine print, it says that the locking will be available only from the 11th.
No, so for all practical purposes, you are seeing it. Okay, so this is something that we actually discussed with Mr. Prakash Kumar. And he said the moment your accept reject is going to happen only in the annexure for all practical purposes. Now, when you are seeing the data, how that interface will look at, what you will be able to see and how you will see, that one needs to see when the interface comes. But the manner in which they are talking about it, they are saying that you will be able to see it literally every day.
Yeah, because seeing sometimes, because up to 10th you have an opportunity to again amend it or edit it or change it. So anyway, you'll have to do your reconciliation only after 11th. You cannot do earlier and say, okay, I have logged so many, so this part is over.
There are several permutation combinations that you can look at. You might have a situation where I'm uploading on a daily basis. Now, I raised an invoice today for some reason that supply did not happen. I had to cancel it tomorrow. If it got locked, I have no choice but I have to raise a credit note. Now, the way we understand it, credit note can be raised only in 2 or 3 circumstances. Can you cancel this? You might have a situation. Now, it's very, very common that, I would, as a manufacturer, I would have raised invoices on a daily basis. Okay. On the 29th and the 30th, I have raised invoices. I have uploaded instantly because of the way the system is integrated. But the truck did not leave on 29th, on the 30th. And for whatever be the reason, I cancelled the invoice. I cancelled the invoice. Now that cancellation happened in the next month. Today, I might not report it only because I'm able to capture it. Tomorrow, if I've uploaded and that fellow has locked it, whether I can cancel it, whether I can stop it, I don't know. And this is a live situation where we are telling customers that, please have a look at it, because while you might want to be, timely, you want to comply, situations like this can result in a situation where you are not reporting the correct liability inadvertently. And at the same time, you might have a cash outflow at the first instance. How that locking will take place, we still have to see.
That's it.
In one way, it is a unidirectional flow of credits. Means unless supplier is upload the invoice, I cannot avail the credit. So in table, in annexure, there is a table 3L relates to missing invoices.
Yes.
So missing invoice at our own, I can take the credit. At our own, I can avail the credit.
We'll have to see how much that. No, the way I understand this, when you say missing invoices on which credit has been claimed in T2 and the supplier has not reported the same till filing, I don't know whether these are going to be the type where you are reporting your liability, or it is going to be those part where you are going to say that, you please allow me to take credit.
Basically, this 3L table will be for only 6 months. Because somewhere in serial number 4,
they are saying that
this will be available only for the transactional period, and the transaction period is only for 6 months. So after that, there will be no relevance of missing invoices. The credit will be flow on the unidirectional flow.
Only one way. True. I'll just answer this one query that I've received. So the question is, up to what turnover figure it will go for assessment to Maharashtra government sales tax department. That you will have to actually refer to the notification which is talking about the division of taxpayers. There is a notification which is put up on the Maharashtra government website, Maharashtra VAT website. Yeah, actually it's outside only, it's not even inside. So you just have to look for that notification. It is it gives a detailed Excel sheet. The sheet is somewhere 47 MB, so you better have good bandwidth to download it. Or otherwise, you can ask. You can ask somebody else to look at it. Yeah. Now they're started showing. Yes. The second one is this new system will be applicable from which date? Right now they are saying it will be applicable from April 19. So we don't know whether they will stick to that, whether they will change the deadline. We don't know. Yes.
See, one of the essential feature of any of this regulation or return is that you have to match it with your books of accounts. Because in tax audit, every sphere you have to say, give the reconciliation, what is the different reason thereof. So this provision that we have, that on 10th till 10th you can upload it, and that you pay the liability on the 20th, and then next 10 days whatever you can upload, also you take the liability. So think of situation where organization close the books around 10th or 12th. So the return liability and the books liability will be different. So that will definitely give rise to reconciliation after reconciliation of reconciliation, and there is difference of liability which has to be reported.
But that's bound to happen in several places. So you might have goods might be a specific situation, services might be a different situation.
Right.
So you might in your books of accounts have a situation where you have unbilled revenue.
Yes.
That has always been a bone of contention in service tax. It continues to be in this thing also, in GST also.
But the liability will, in case of unbilled revenue, there was a mismatch of liability. There in this case, there is a mismatch of liability.
No.
So
there will always be a timing
mismatch. There will be a timing mismatch, and I think we'll have to actually, because of this 10th date and all, we'll always have that as a process. I think that's a very valid point, and with that, I think I would like to thank you. I think Samir has done. We can take questions offline after a couple of minutes. Just a couple of minutes for formal vote of thanks. Of course, Samir has dealt with the entire concept very well, taken us through the past, the proposed changes, and thereafter explaining the limitations of the new system as well. I'll straight away request Mandar to propose a well-deserved vote of thanks. But before that, let me request Suhas, our treasurer, to present a vote of frame on our behalf.
Friends, before proposing a formal vote of thanks, I have some important announcements to make. I've heard people saying that this GST system is a mess, and some of them have also gone to the extent of saying this is a monster. But I believe that a known devil is better than an unknown devil, and what BCA is trying to do is that make you aware of what are the features of this devil. And in fact, in that particular respect, only on 8th of August, we had kept a meeting, an interactive session with the GSTN officer. And as a result of that particular process, probably we can act as an intermediary whereby if you have any specific issues, system issues, you can probably share it with us, and we may be in a position to at least forward those issues with the GSTN people so as to arrive at a better solution. So how that particular modus operandi would be there, probably you will get it shortly within a week's time on our website www.bcas.org.in. So probably over there you will get to know the manner in which you would be in a position to communicate to us your issues, and we would definitely forward those issues to a right persons so that there would be a easy and good resolutions of the queries. Another attempt has been made because it's always our attempt. In fact, in our BCS annual plan also, harnessing technology is one of our agenda. So with this, tomorrow at the very same day, the taxation committee has organized an interactive session with the officials from NSDL and Traces to deal with the recent developments in the Traces for TDS processing. So I'm looking forward to all you people again coming or meeting tomorrow at the very same place. Also, I think a handout has been already circulated to us about the BCS forthcoming events, two of which I would like to specifically draw your attention to. One is the GST audit, a curtain raiser program, similar to a lecture meeting which is kept on Wednesday, 5th of September 2018, where probably these issues relating to your reconciliation and all those issues will be properly dealt with by Mr. Pareen Mehta. And Indirect Tax Committee has also come out with a very long duration course. It's a 6 days course. More than 30 speakers would be going to address the participants. The seats are limited, and I believe more than 50 seats have already been filled. So please enroll as far as possible, as soon as possible, because this is open to both members as well as to non-members. And it's a very extensive workshop with more than 45 hours of learning. With this, I believe I come to the important task of performing a hearty vote of thanks. Friends, a wise man once said that the technology can create wonders as well as blunders. Samir Kapadia has, I think, taken us through a detailed processing of this particular devil, and has also tried to highlight various issues which probably could result either into wonders or blunders, which probably only the time will tell us. And one thing is sure, that if we know this devil properly, then you will never know when this devil will start working for you like a genie. So probably we all should put our hands together and thank Mr. Kapadia for giving us this enlightened address on the recent developments in the GST returns. Thank you.